All right, let's talk Atlanta Falcons. This is a team that over the course of the past couple offseason took a lot of criticism for how they were managed, the moves they were making. Well, I tell you what, everyone is coming out of the woodwork now to talk about the Falcons. Everyone's blown away. It speaks to the incredible job, all-time kind of stuff done here by the Atlanta squad. We'll get into all this reporting, some interesting data in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Atlanta Falcons took a lot of flack, right, if being totally honest, going all the way back to when they drafted Michael Penix Jr. Everybody and their grandmother said defensive end, this defense has flaws. And of course, we had the issues during 2024. Now we're seeing this Falcon squad, young quarterback, great defense across the board, a lot of talent, and this team is looking really good. And it's not just my opinion saying that. I know a lot of Falcons fans are saying that too. We're seeing a lot of football experts, the smartest minds come out and be really impressed by the Atlanta Falcons. And none other than head coach turned analyst John Gruden has come out and said, listen, this defense in particular, this is a special group. Let's get into the reporting right here, courtesy of SI.com. The report begins, the Atlanta Falcons revamped their defense during the 2025 offseason, adding a ton of new faces as they hope to improve the 31st best pass rush in the National Football League. Through the first 5 games this season, they're currently the #1 defense in football in terms of yards allowed per game. Former NFL head coach John Gruden broke down the members of Atlanta's new defense, which he christened the Blank Squad. The name serves as a double entendre. Not only does it nod to Atlanta Falcons owner Arthur Blank, but it also reflects a group of defenders in Atlanta who are not big-name stars that are playing some great football. And that's a really good point, because if you look at this really good Falcons defense, obviously the young guys are stepping up and having themselves some really great seasons, but it's the veterans, it's those additions and some second-year guys. They're not superstars, right? There's no one that's getting all the hype right now. There's a lot of hype on other teams in this division and in the NFC in general, where they've got more attention, more name buzz, if you will. But this Falcons group in aggregate, together with how they're playing, better than anybody else. The report goes on to say, again, working with John Gruden, or quoting John Gruden, I should say, who are these guys in the blank squad? Gruden asked in a rhetorical sense. Most people who haven't been paying attention to the Falcons won't know half the members who make up the best statistical defense in the NFL. He started with inside linebacker Caden Ellis, an addition from a few years ago. By the way, didn't get a lot of hype, but really good addition, of course. Caden Ellis, for some reason, doesn't get the credit that he deserves, Gruden said. He can play off the ball or on the ball and rock your, and he's got more tackles for loss than most guys I've seen at the linebacker position. The next player he mentions, another member of Atlanta's linebacking core, Divine Diablo, who the Falcons picked up in free agency during the offseason. The Raiders let him go. Listen, we don't want you, right? You're not an expensive guy. We let you go to the Atlanta Falcons. We want to go a different direction. Falcons, again, blank squad, no name guy, comes to Atlanta doing a lot of great things. Gruden says, and then they got the ex-Raider. Who the hell is Divine Diablo wearing number 0? He's the other linebacker. He's the free agent that signed with the Falcons. The report continues. Gruden then moved on to the secondary and on to cornerback Mike Hughes. Mike Hughes, number 21, veteran corner. He signs a 1-year deal to come back and play opposite A.J. Terrell, and we all know Mike Hughes can make tackles. The next guy up for Gruden, pass rusher Arnold Ebiketie. Again, this is a guy, was a rookie a few years ago, had some flashes, nothing special, coming along. And then we talk about saying this guy's name. And then how about saying this guy's name? Arnold Ebiketie, number 17. Talk about a presence on the edge. I love that guy, man, Gruden said. By the way, it's really hard reading Gruden's quotes because, just the way Gruden talks, he's all over the map. So it's kind of funny because in my head while I'm reading it, I can just imagine, Gruden, I love that guy, man. I love that guy. Just the John Grudenisms. Anyway, the next guy he mentioned is a big man on the defensive line, Brandon Dorlus. And here's my guy, Brandon Dorlus, number 54. Here's my little Gruden impression. Lots of guys play the run. Lots of guys rush the passer. Brandon Dorlus is a second-year player who was hurt last year. He is the most improved Atlanta Falcon, the guy nobody wants to talk about, the best-kept secret in Atlanta, Georgia, Gruden said. Yeah, and the report goes on to say, highlights a lot of other members of this Falcon squad, of course, talking about some of the young guys as well. But I think it's really important to understand what the Falcons have done, and an incredible job by their front office and their coaching staff, and it doesn't give the credit it deserves. There's a lot of teams that undergo drastic transformations, right? And usually that involves, top 10 picks, top 5 picks, massive trades, right? A team trades for a Micah Parsons, like the Packers did. For example, you trade for 2 top flight wide receivers. You look at, the Seattle Seahawks made a lot of deals, for example, bringing in some guys, trading away some guys. The Raiders try to make some big name acquisitions, not really working out for them. But the Patriots, they turned it around with a bunch of huge name signings. Stephon Diggs, Milton Williams, right? top 5 selection in a left tackle. So, usually when we talk about teams turning things around, that's usually how it works, right? You make a big name coaching hire, Mike Vrabel in the Patriots example, a lot of draft capital, top 5, top 10 picks, throw hundreds of millions of dollars at people. Look at the Bears. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on their offensive line, a lot of draft picks in terms of top 10 kind of picks, top 15 picks for the offense, bringing in an offensive coach, Ben Johnson, the Wunderkind, right? He's going to go in there and change the offense, and the Bears look better. So that's how it normally works. The Falcons have done an incredible job doing things much differently. They've developed guys. They brought in veterans, on the cheap for good value, and they integrated into their defense. Ulrich wasn't a sexy hire. Did anyone say, "Oh boy, this is the hire of the offseason" when he was brought to the Atlanta Falcons to lead the defense? Nobody did. Absolutely nobody did. Even on this channel, I'm going to be totally honest, we said this was a solid hire, but not spectacular. It was a decent hire. They could have done much, much worse, but there were some maybe bigger names out there. That was my mistake. I was wrong because so far Ulrich has done fantastic. You look at these linebacker additions, look at their draft picks. The first-round guys, James Pierce Jr., Jalen Walker, we've covered with a lot of film reviews recently, and they're doing absolutely outstanding. But guys, they're splitting reps. This is a team group. They're playing together all 3 levels and playing really good as a unit, really good as a team. And it speaks to what the Atlanta Falcons are doing from a macro level, from a team-building perspective. So let me pull up this graphic I put together right here. I think it's really important. So this is defensive spending by team and looking at just salary cap allocation. And this isn't the entire NFL. I couldn't get them all to fit on one team. I got most of the teams. And you go from left to right. You can see the Steelers far and away the most, and the Giants, Colts, Commanders, then the Bears, the Cardinals, the Patriots, the Texans, the Titans, the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Packers, the Vikings, the Jaguars, the Chargers, the Bills, Buccaneers, Lions, and then the Falcons. Then the Atlanta Falcons, right, well below average, or maybe a little bit below average, but they're the number 1 defense in football statistically. So again, you talk about value, you talk about coaching, you talk about playing team defense. This is what you're talking about. You're playing middle of the road, roughly, for your defense, and you're the best in the NFL. That's how it works, guys. That's how you build a team. That's how you use a salary cap. That's how you use the draft picks, right? Great job. Terry Fontenot, this coaching staff, working hand in hand. It's getting it done, guys. And the reason I include the Bengals and the Cowboys right next to the Falcons, because they both, a little bit less than Atlanta, but both those defenses are really struggling. Certainly Dallas is the worst in football right now. So if you look at dollars spent, the Falcons are much closer to teams that are the worst or 5th worst or whatever the Bengals are. They're pretty close to the bottom as well. And they're actually, again, doing much better than those teams. In fact, they're doing better than the Steelers and Giants and Colts and teams like that defensively, despite spending a lot less money. It's a credit to the front office, coaching staff across the board. Incredible job. I think in my perspective right now, what the Falcons have done with their draft picks and their free agency moves, just aggregating it all together and what they've done defensively, I think at this point serves as the biggest move anybody's made the entire year. All right, we got more to break down when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, but first, Falcons fans in the comment section below, massive matchup this weekend. It's an interesting one out west in San Francisco against the 49ers. 49ers, good football team, a lot of injuries, getting a little healthier. Real question mark. Really well coached, really physical, tough team. Always tough to go out to San Francisco. Give us your prediction. Final score. Falcons, 49ers. How you think it's going to go? I tell you what, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think we got 2 good teams. Potential postseason preview, perhaps. Real good chance here for the Falcons to prove what happened Monday night against Buffalo. Not a fluke, and prove they can go on the road and deliver a decisive victory. I'm excited to see how they do. Again, give us your prediction. Falcons, 49ers. Put it in the comment section below. But without further ado, let's pull up that matchup here and start looking at it here. And it's pretty close to 50-50, or as close as you're going to get in the National Football League. The 49ers at home currently have a 54.5% chance to win at 4-2. The Atlanta Falcons have a 45.2% chance to win at 3-2. There's obviously a 0.3% chance of tying, as you can see for anyone there who does the math, and anyone who remembers the Packers-Cowboys game on Sunday Night Football a few weeks ago. There is still there's a real chance the game could end in a tie, as unusual as that sounds. So the Atlanta Falcons, again, it's basically 50-50. I mean, it's when it's as close as it gets in the National Football League. If you look at the spread there at the bottom, it opened with the 49ers as a 3.5-point home favorite. The sports books generally give the home team, especially if it's a pretty good home field advantage like the 49ers have, especially being West Coast, the Atlanta Falcons being East Coast, that 3 points is usually the advantage they give the home team. So in that situation, so they basically say these rosters are even. The odds have shifted slightly from a 3.5-point favorite. They currently sit at 2.5 points for San Francisco. So we've seen some money move to the Atlanta side. I think a lot of that is kind of the aftermath of the victory against Buffalo, as people look at this Falcons team and they look at Penix Jr., they look at Drake London, Bijan Robinson, this offensive line, and this team defense. People sit there and say, I'll move a little bit of dollars over to the Atlanta Falcons side of the ledger when it comes to this game. And this is a big matchup for Atlanta, and I like their chances here. But more importantly, I like the way this team is built because they're set up for sustained success, right? A lot of teams, when they have, like I mentioned before, a massive turnaround, it usually involves a couple star players or adding a couple great players, and it just flips the script. But the reality is the Atlanta Falcons are built as a team. They got some budding young stars that are only going to get better. Walker, James Pierce Jr., Xavier Watts, Billy Bowman, right? These are guys that are only going to get better. But they've got a lot of cheap guys as well, as Diablo comes to mind, of course, being a preeminent example of that. Ellis has been around for a few years, but he's a great example of that as well. How about Ororo getting more playing time, becoming a better player inside? Anya Meta was a really good addition, continues to play good football. Like, this is a group of guys. Ebiketie, again, a guy a few years, been around a little bit. He's starting to play better and better. We're seeing a group of guys here that's coming together and figuring out how to play in this defense. And when you get a deep, talented, athletic group like this Falcon squad, there are a lot of times where the opposing offense just doesn't have any answers. And we talk about this in our film reviews we do of this Atlanta Falcons defense, specifically their two young edge defenders, Walker and Pierce Jr., is that they're so athletic, they're so dynamic, and they've got such a great complex scheme that they execute so well that offenses are kind of like, we don't know what to do, right? They'll take away the outside zone run and they'll simultaneously take away the bootleg off of it. We broke down a play against the Commanders a few weeks ago where the Commanders were setting up a running play, inside zone, outside zone, going to the right side of the offense. They did it like 3 or 4 times. And the Falcons defended it well each and every time, backside pursuit. And they were setting up a reverse to Deebo Samuel. And I think it was Jalen Walker. And Jalen Walker stopped on a dime when he saw it was a reverse and chased down Samuel behind for like a 3 or 4 yard gain, right? And as an offense, like, listen, we've been running to that side, surrendering only 1 or 2 yards for 2 possessions, setting up the reverse. We finally run the reverse. It's supposed to be a huge play, and we get 4 yards. The Falcons, again, their athleticism, their speed, their youth, their energy is off the charts. Their coaching has been phenomenal. Their scheme is outstanding. But boy, oh boy, what they've done building this defense over the course of basically 36 months is nothing short of, 12 months, is nothing short of commendable. I mean, 2 years ago, 2024, they were 31st in the NFL in rushing the passer. Now they're among the best in football. And they've done it without, again, just like, they haven't had a Myles Garrett emerge or something like that. They didn't get a top 5 pick where they got, the greatest pass rusher in NFL history immediately added to their roster, right? They didn't sign Lawrence Taylor in the offseason, although, of course, they've made a lot of good moves. So this is a defense that was done from a team perspective, from an Ulrich perspective, from a Raheem Morris perspective, and, of course, from a Terry Fontenot perspective. And the job they've done and what Gruden has noticing, and a lot of other people are noticing as well, that the incredible effort across the board from this Falcon squad, changing this defense, it's seemingly overnight, but it was a months-long process. Free agency, trades, draft, development, training camp, all those things, figuring it out. Great job by the Atlanta Falcons, and I think they got a great chance to come away with a massive victory against the San Francisco 49ers.